Good morning.
Good morning, my dear. Good morning, world.
Hello, world. This is show number 2.
Show number 2.
Our radio
Better
show.
get our timer.
We're oh so professional here. We're using
Absolutely.
a phone.
And we're actually buying a new microphone, would you believe it? And it has speakers on either side of it so that we can speak from either side, and the thing will automatically pick up your voice. Doesn't matter about mine. Yours is the most important one, isn't it?
Well, mine's louder than yours. Oh, remember last night we were talking about the rod of iron?
Yeah.
Just explain what the rod of iron, because the scriptures talk about the rod of iron.
Well,
Rule with the rod of iron.
I'm just making up another YouTube. The idea is that a lot of the stuff that I want to tell the people that you can't do it just talking about it. You've got to actually see the designs and the drawings and the measurements and so forth, which I've done. And I'll just get, you talk on, and I'll just get the, we was going to do this another way, however
That other way fell apart. Joel suggested that we should do a video panning behind the scene, or he will, behind the scene, what goes on to actually get one of these up onto the internet.
Well, the idea is that we'll talk us through as much as we can questions we've been asked, etc., and then explaining how you measure the earth to prove creation. In some of the other videos I've done, I talked about Einstein being a very nice man, and he believed in the magnificence, was it? The word he used?
Luminous.
The luminous man, the Essene. Because he was raised as a Catholic church, in a Catholic church whose parents were, and all his family were anti-religious. They believed that the Old Testament is a load of rubbish and superstition, and he's quite right. So geniuses think this way, so the whole family were very smart. So I think he would appreciate the fact that I would correct him on certain things, and one of them is the speed of light. And we spoke about that, and we've done an upload on it, which we'll do again for a different audience now, because these are going to be radio, and it's going to be YouTube, and then it's going to Facebook, and all these places where you can look it up when you're coming home. Say in London, it's 3 a.m. in the morning. Well, you can't be listening to the radio there live, so you can tune in, or you can go directly to the YouTube and see what we're doing, see that we're real people, and that we're talking about things that are very, very practical. One of the things that has been a great concern of mine, I'll just get back to Einstein for a moment, it's not E equals mc squared, it is E equals m minus g gravity squared equals the speed of light, c. So it's E equals m minus g squared equals light, c.
So C is not constant.
C is not constant.
It can't be. And it
And
explains the young universe.
It has to be what's taught in universities, because all the universities are under the yoke of the Talmudic Judaism, which has been around since 500 BC. And that's when the Khazars adopted the same Judaism. They brought in the rabbis from Babylon, which were the Pharisees, which are your churches today. They're all Pharisees. That's why Jesus was an Essene who came to save the Jews. And
now explain the Jews at the time who were running the temple.
Well, they weren't real Jews. A lot of people who are claiming to be of descent of these Jews is not something to be proud of, because many of them were Idumean. So what that means is we're looking for the royal line of Judah, as opposed to the pretend Jews that came there as a Babylonian priest, which were kicked out of Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar and so forth. And they invented what's called the Talmud, which is, in the time that I walked the earth, was a Mishnah. And that's why I condemned them, because they believe things like you could put the blood of a lamb and your sins are in the lamb because of the sacrifice. You impart your sins into the lamb, and therefore this moron God cannot see through the blood of the sin of the idiot who put the sins on the land. But it was a con job, it was a Ponzi scheme to make money. And control by fear.
A lamb of a goat, or a goat, and then he's the scapegoat because it's the
most ridiculous
the
thing.
goat that would take on the sin of the human being.
The Essenes, of course, they are the ones that descended to the shepherd kings that went to Egypt and conquered Egypt with the power of their minds. A very good scholar named Raymond C. Capt has written many books. He's a brilliant man, American, but studied in England, a linguist, very good on the Bible, though he sucked in, like most of people out there, that Paul is representing Jesus when he was a Pharisee of the Babylonian school. So he was a Talmudic Pharisee. Right? And he came along 15 years after the cross, so let's not even talk about it.
And their entire game is to infiltrate.
Infiltrate and take over. That's what the Jesuits are, and that's why they are Babylonian Jews, the Jesuits. So it's all the same Talmudic blood sacrifice and rule as satanic powers. That's why the throne and even America is all of the administration of Obama and the previous people. For example, they're all Jews in the administration. And this Israelite is bullshit. There's no such thing as an Israelite. The reality is the Essenes were the ones that brought the word of God to the earth through descending from the book of Enoch, and then Methuselah built the pyramids, then Noah, son of Enoch, son of Lamech, who lived 777 years. And you look up in your King James Bible, and King James took vengeance on these bastards that beheaded his mother when he was 21 years of age. He was a king of Scotland. So by the time he became king of England, by the move of William Shakespeare, who is the pen name of the 17th Earl of Oxley, he got him in to then be presented with the manuscripts from the Freemason universities of they wanted their own Bible. Well, he and William Shakespeare, and you see there's a thing called a non-number, and that is the method of determining who writes something in perfect English. Well, William Shakespeare, the Earl of Oxley, had perfect English, and when he wrote something, you could tell who's genuine and who isn't. So there's no forgeries involved. When you look at Shakespeare's work, you know who it is by the way it's written. Same thing when you look at the Bible, it has got the Shakespearean flavour to it. So there was two men working on that, and they put all these codes in it. So that's why you come up with things like the king's going to let you know that the God of the Bible, and I've got a piece of paper here which I can hold up in front of the screen so you can look it up when you get back. So there it is there, and that's how many times the word Lord is found in the King James Bible. Well, you go get the other translations in the New King James Bible, you lose your concordance numbers, and you use all the repeats of numbers like that. They take that out real quick, because it's identifying the beast as being 666, right? So your Bible.
And 666 is the Babylonian numbering system.
That's the Babylonian numbering system. So he's identifying the Talmud by the Babylonian numbering system of the Lord 6666. If you look at the new translations, they've decreased the numbers. The word Jesus, they've increased the numbers from 942 to 1225. That's in the NIV, owned by Rupert Murdoch, who is an Australian and a Talmudic Zionist Jew. They all want you dead. What you have to come to terms with is that as they haven't been able to kill me, they may not have been back for a very long time, because it's written in stars. I'll give you some idea. That one there I printed up. It'll be on the YouTube when you look for it off the computer, but I'll just show you what that is there. It is all of the distances in astronomical units from Jupiter out, this is including Saturn, so they all total 31.68 astronomical units, which is Lord Jesus Christ in Greek gematria. Now the English, they couldn't get into university unless you've got to be a Freemason for a start, but you also had to be fluent in Greek, so you have to ask why. So the New Testament was written in Greek. You'd have to ask why. Well, Jesus, I spoke Aramaic. Now Aramaic is a number language, and it is very, very interesting when you see how the some friends of mine who are Elohist priests from Syria, how, when I spoke to them, how the numbers line up with the numbers I'm doing by their valuation of the numbers, and I'm doing it through concordance numbers and the valuation in Greek and Hebrew gematria. It's very complex. So anyone who's on a pulpit yapping their mouth off, walk out. Because number one, they'll be talking about Paul, and number two, they'll be talking about Moses and the Torah, where in fact they have no idea what they're doing. They're actually pushing the idea of the Talmudic Judaism.
And it's interesting when really reading the nihilist document that we did last week. Nihilist was the one to bring the protocols of Zion to the attention of the world. In reading the nihilist document, spelled N-I-L-U-S, you can go and search for it, we'll put the link below. Read through that, you will see that these that are known as the learned elders of Zion, the Jews who call themselves Jews or not, etc., they refer to themselves as the sons of Moses. So that there is what I call a blues clue. Now, as the Christ, he's been telling the world that the Torah, it's a crock, it's evil. The God of the Torah is not himself, it's not Jesus, it's not the God of love. And when he went to the cross to fulfill the law, it was the insanity of their law that perpetuated the sacrifice, the blood calling for it. So he said, okay, well, I'm the final sacrifice. Now, the sons of Moses, there is so much disinformation, getting a lot of people confused, because there are those who have a lot of knowledge and are quoting literally from Genesis to Revelation and explaining scriptures, revelation that has not been told before, and trapping a lot of people. They begin to fear for their own soul, if you like, when they realize, for example, the Song of Moses. In the Revelation, it talks about the Song of Moses. And
A new song.
These sons of Moses would have you believe that everything revolves around Moses. And they're again disguised as Christians, Judeo-Christians, hiding behind the scenes, quoting scripture after scripture, when the book within the book that Daniel saw is the Numbers, revealed by the James Strong's Concordance within the King James Bible. So,
all right, now I'd like to skip along a little bit, because we'll go over this in the YouTube when we load it up. It'll be the same dialogue. But one of the things that is happening in the world is the blood sacrifice of children. And as I've said, that the Obama administration is totally Jewish. Even they made May Jewish month. Now, this is a Christian country. Now, he's a skull and bonesman, worships the devil out of Yale. Alistair Crowley is supposed to be the most evil man on earth, and his son was George Bush. No, was his son?
Senior. George
Bush Senior. His wife, the one he got pregnant. Now, let's get this right. Was Barbara Bush, who got pregnant to Alistair Crowley and gave birth to George Bush Jr. So then he becomes President of the United States. He's a skull and bonesman.
Yeah, Barbara Bush is the daughter of Alistair Crowley.
No.
Barbara Bush is the daughter of Alistair Crowley.
Oh, you're right.
And married,
that's right.
and married George Bush Jr. Senior.
Yeah.
And gave
I'm
birth
so
to
horrified
George
I'd keep
Bush
it out of my
Jr.
mind.
It's
That's
really,
right.
it is horrifying.
She's the daughter of Alistair Crowley.
She looks like him.
She does. Ugly as.
Ugly as, yes.
And so George Bush Jr. is a skull and bonesman, as was the father, George Bush Sr., who was married to Barbara Bush, as you know, and she's the daughter of Alistair Crowley, the most evil man on earth, which has long been known to be that, as a fact. So he was. Do you think they're going to care one little iota about the babies in Iraq and blowing them up and putting plutonium into the bullets and so forth, and bombs, and causing these huge deformities amongst these children? No, of course not. Why? Because anyone who is not a Jew is an animal placed on the earth to serve them, and you butcher animals, right? Like you want to eat a sheep, well, you cut its throat. They want something you've got, they'll cut your throat. It doesn't mean a thing to them. So this is what the Talmud's all about, and that's why the books and laws of Moses, right down from Exodus on back up, Deuteronomy, Numbers, Leviticus, and then Moses is also attributed to writing Genesis. Well, that's a bit of a misnomer too. So we've got this tremendous amount of nonsense going on, and the laws were that you could pass, as I said before, you could pass your sins into a sacrificial lamb, cut its throat, and the blood pours out, and of course the moron God can't see through that. God is supposed to create the universe, yet can't see through the blood of a man. It's like what you're doing behind it in evil places, that you can't read his soul, that he's an evil bastard, so he's going to get rid of his evil deeds. Even in the Talmud it says if you're going to do evil, go to another city and do it.
Oh.
Whoa.
Now, so what books are reliable? You've got Isaiah and you've got Daniel.
Yeah, Isaiah and Daniel's good, Job's good.
And Job is the old.
You've got Ezekiel. Ezekiel's got some codes in it. Again, you've got to be very careful when you read Ezekiel. And when we read, the King James Bible will be the Bible of the future, but it'll have all these notes beside it, what's happening and who's this and what's going on here, and it's explaining it. But the number for Ezekiel is 3168 in Hebrew, of the James Strong's Concordance, written around 1830 by American James Strong with 100 scholars. And they put together this dictionary of the Old Testament, 8674 words of the Old Testament and 5624 of the New Testament, and it's one is smaller than the other by 3050, and that's Jah in Hebrew, and that's missing from the New Testament. So they've taken God, Yahweh, all the way out of the New Testament, and then they've replaced it with the Pharisee version of what Jesus said via Paul, Saul, the false apostle. All right. So this has got to be all straightened out. So by divine right, King James, he was the first of the true line of kings to sit upon the rock of the scone, Genesis 28:11 I think it is, which anointed him king. So he became able to do the divine thing. And so what he did was divine. And we can see that in my history, that I did things on certain days and married people, and we had children, and etc. Other people had children, like my third wife to her first husband, and how these all things come about, and they all married together. So when you study what we've done, and in the future uploads we'll be more specific and show you how they interrelate on specific dates and times, etc. And proves absolutely that I am who I say I am. And that's the whole point. These fools are so stupid they think they can outsmart God, and that God wouldn't be coming to the earth again as it was as Jesus, because the soul of Yahweh cannot have a father, because that is the Father. So he has a Virgin Mary who was trained for the job. She was raised in the temple, and this was the temple of Yahweh, not the temple of Solomon, because that was destroyed in 586 BC by Nebuchadnezzar. And that's the reason it was destroyed, because it was rebuilt by King Cyrus, or a decree of King Cyrus under his son Darius, who had to dig up the old decree of Cyrus, and they proved that yes, he did say that he would rebuild the temple in Jerusalem for the descendants of Daniel, and this is what happened. So Daniel and his compadres got back to Jerusalem in the early days, and then over many years they were wanting to rebuild the temple, and finally that they were able to rebuild it with the authority from Darius, the Persian king. All right, so by the time you get Jesus coming along, he's got to fulfill the prophecies of Isaiah, which is to die on the cross. Now, I'd like to show you my wrists there, which I just thought of, because this seems to impress a lot of people. Those wrists have the nail holes. Right, they've got the same on my feet. I've got scars on my forehead, which is lining up with the Shroud of Turin, and on my feet, etc. So this is primarily what Pope Benedict saw, my face is the same bone structure, and when he had a look at the photograph that was sent to him, he looked at it for 3 days and he finally concluded it's impossible for me not to be the same person as resurrected Jesus from the photograph of the shrouded ring, because that's what it is.
However, more than that, what Benedict described when in the apostolic letter, that as he held, at first Benedict was reluctant to believe, and I understand a man in his position, he cannot be taken in, and so he at first rejected, and then he humbled himself, as all have to do, to begin the instruction. After he held onto the photograph for 3 days, he said, and finally he said, I believe it was that like mental release, he was filled with a love and a compassion of God that just flowed through him. And it was at that moment that he conceded, this is really him. There is no denying it. I call it the blatantly obvious for the pure in heart. Pope Benedict XVI is such a man. He is pure in heart. And as Jesus, he told his disciples that at the time of the end, everything was foretelling at the time of the end, which is now. When he's back here, he has to suffer many things before the revealing of who he is. He said that the pure in heart shall see God. Benedict did. He saw God in Brian Leonard Golightly Marshall, the face of the shrouded Turin. And once that the confirmation was that rush, that feeling, that encompassing within him. You see, truth resonates throughout the body of a soul. It resonates. It can shake you. It can move you to tears. Truth resonates. That's what happened with Pope Benedict. And it was after that that he announced to the world, by first announcing it through his Facebook page, Brian Leonard Golightly Marshall is Salvator Mundi, Saviour of the world. And he has finally met him through the email. It was live email communicating with Brian as Pope Benedict was asking him many questions concerning the church and the saints of old and more modern saints, etc. And as Brian was answering him, and then finally he got down to the business of the church. What do you think of Vatican II? Because there has been much schism created with the introduction of Vatican II, all deliberate. So after it was a 24-hour period of considering Vatican II, but I have to tell you, it was 36 minutes of the information flowing from the heavenly realm that produced the 49 points of Vatican III that was sent to Pope Benedict. Again, you will read in the apostolic letter where he announces to the world that when he held on to Vatican III, he was again moved, and he said it just makes sense, because Vatican III addresses every concern of the Catholic Church in order to run it and restore it, with Christ ruling as the rod of iron and Benedict as his lamb, the innocent, the standard, if you like, for all men to aspire to in their humility and purity of heart. But a man such as Pope Benedict needs that rod of iron, and that can only come from the Christ, because he is the one who announced judgment against the Jews who call themselves Jews.
Now, I want to say with the rod of iron, you think Jesus turns the other cheek? Never. Doesn't happen. And talking about child molestation and in the church, when the Pope got rid of over 400 people that were either child molesters that he couldn't get charged because the cardinals and bishops and so forth would protect them and shift them around, so he just defrocked them, threw them out. And there was something in the order up to 400 to 500, including homosexual priests, because you can't be a homosexual and represent Jesus. So The Talmud dominates the Catholic Church, and this is the Babylonian Talmud and child sacrifice, and that's why around the world that you'll find that the Christians are being attacked all over the Middle East and Africa, and of course in the USA, and they're trying to kill all Christians. But in particular, they're doing it because they can't kill me. They've tried. It's been stepped up. If you look at history, how the church has been, the Christians have been attacked, because they know that the Christians will and are looking for the Jesus Christ coming back. So now I'm back. And they've tried to keep it off the internet, and of course they failed and tried to kill me all the way through many times over. So I've been asked what I would think about how I'd handle the child molester situation and the disappearance of children throughout, for example, America. There's 300,000 go missing each year. Europe's about the same, maybe a little more. In England, it's 100,000 children disappear. In Australia, it's 40,000 children disappear. And it's all done through the social services, where the women, primarily they're lesbians and sadists, Satanists, and they'll go to someone's home and they'll actually grab a child even off the street, and the child has just disappeared, and the parents would be labelled, or the parent in a lot of single families will be labelled as being mentally ill and not capable of looking after children. How would I deal with it? Well, today you've got the technology where it's easy to find out who's who in the zoo and who works for whom, and who is the people that are the ones go out in the streets and to the schools and round up the kids, and they just disappear out of sight. What would you do? Well, I call it the Batman principle. And basically, when they was trying to nail me in Canada, I was taken to a Wookie maximum security prison, and on the way to the Forensic Institute over at Port Coquitlam, so I had to stay there for 6 days. And as I was waltzing around talking to these inmates, some of them are pretty bad people. They should be in there. Some of them people that had other smaller problems, but they all were, for the most part, in there because they'd done something wrong. And I'd walk around whistling, and this guard said to me, "Stop whistling." And I said, "What do you mean, stop whistling?" He said, "Well, when they used to hang the people here years ago, the guards would whistle. So it's a taboo. You don't whistle in this prison." I said, "We didn't get stuck. No one's telling me what to do." So I'm walking around with all these inmates, and they're all looking at me sideways, right? And of course, I'm a pretty big fella, so if they step out of line, I'd knock them out, no problem. So this particular day, I'm whistling away, and we lined up, and the guard saying, "Hey, don't whistle, just shut up." So I go into the canteen to get something to eat for dinner, or it must have been lunchtime. And I pick up my food, and there's a table there, and there's 3 of these thugs sitting there. So I went and sat in the empty chair. "You can't sit here," I just get stuffed. Right? So then this great huge monster walks up behind me. "Hey, that's my seat." And I said, "Take a hike." Right? Well, you don't do that to these thugs, because these are long-term prisoners. They'll knife you. So anyhow, I was sort of very surprised, because the whole canteen area, which could hear me, was sort of dead silent. So one of them got talking about how it'd been worked over with a baseball bat. And I said, "Oh yeah, I got a broken leg and this and that and whatever, fractured skull." And I said, "Well, what did you do about it?" He said, "Nothing." I said, "What do you mean you've done nothing?" I said, "Why don't you go to the police?" Well, this was horrified, right? I said, "Look, you make your enemy's enemy your best friend. The police are there for a job." I said, "All you mongrels," and I'm talking to the whole 150, 200 men. I said, "You're all in here for some reason, right? And if you didn't have police and laws that were going to be held by righteous people, your kids wouldn't be safe to walk on the street. Your women wouldn't be able to walk down the street because they'd be attacked by these lunatics on drugs. And it would just go on and on and on. So you're all in here for a reason, right? So when you get out, I'd advise you to go straight." That's basically what I'm saying to them. So they was quite horrified. I said, "Now, the baseball bat's a good idea. You're going to find out who these people are that are kidnapping your kids, and they get paid lots of money for delivering a child into the hands of these monsters that's going to nail them to a cross or do some horrid thing to it. This causes the endorphins in the child to be terrified. And the Christians, usually they want the blue-eyed blondes, is what they're after. That's primarily what they're after. And the endorphin in the child being terrified, they then cut the jugular or at the thigh, and then they take the blood out and they drink it, or make matzah balls out of it. So look up on the internet what a matzah ball is, and you'll find it's part of the Jewish ritual.
They call it ritual murder.
It's ritual murder is what they do. So all I'm saying is you've got the computers now, you can hack into the local government, see who's who in the zoo, who's in charge of doing what, who gets sent out to pick up what child, whatever, who they are, and then correct them with a visit by a team of masked gentlemen who look like Batman and Robin, and hit them with baseball bats. Don't kill them, or break their legs. Say, right, next time you go out to pick up a child, this is what's going to happen to you. That's my advice to everybody on the planet. Rule with a rod of iron. So, if you can't get baseball bats in England, well, you can go get a piece of pipe at the local hardware store and put a coupling on the end of it so you don't lose grip of it, and then go work them over. That's what I advise you to do. And tell the police, if they're going to get involved, they'll get worked over too. So if they're not with you, they're against you. Right? That's my advice to you as there's a stoppage of traffic coming up on M25.
M25 on the 24th of July.
And the police are involved, and they are not going to interfere, because I tell you something, some policemen have their children taken away too. Right? So you can't have this kind of rule of law that is totally defiant of righteousness in the way that I would do things, Jesus in the Gospels of preaching love. Well, love is, Pope Benedict said, oh, forgive Francis, he's blah, blah, blah. After he became Pope, he rejected me, right?
Which makes him the Antichrist.
Which makes him the Antichrist. And he said, oh, forgive him. He's the type of guy, forgive everybody. He said, to hell with that. I said, I'm not forgiving that bastard. Right? He's a man that has sworn an oath, and this is in the higher ranking of the Catholic Church, the Jesuits, and there's a black Pope as well. And they swear that anyone who's against him, a woman, for example, they'll slit her stomach open, tear the baby out and smash its head against the wall. This is what the new Pope has sworn to do. And that arsehole, as I'm talking to you, is in Jerusalem today, sitting in and it's been given to the Catholic Church, where the Last Supper occurred. Hello. I've said on radio, if I was given a chance, this interviewer asked me to go into the Oval Office and there was Netanyahu and Obama, what would you do? What would you say? I said, well, can I take an Uzi with me? Because a couple of fine shots would ease the world's problem right then and there. And that's what I'm saying. Just take them out. Get rid of them. Because they're going to go, right, one way or the other. There's a verse in the New Testament which is accurate. This is probably the most important verse. Fear him that can kill both body and soul in hell. And I can assure you, you're in it. Right? So you're going to do it my way, rule with a rod of iron, or you're out of here. And I don't care who does it, whether it be Angelique, whether you have a heart attack, or whether you take them out yourself. Look at it this way. England in particular, during the Blitzkrieg, people were being, all over the country, were being spread out because of the bombing raids. Now the bombing raids on London was after Dresden and all the cities of Germany, after Hitler had said, look, bombing's one thing, but you don't bomb civilians, right? But by the time this was, and you English people don't realise it, Churchill was a Jew, right? Roosevelt was a Jew. Lord Balfour was a Jew. Disraeli was a Jew. Sometimes they call them dipped Jews, meaning they've been baptised into the faith. The man who's in charge of the church in England today is a Jew. Right?
Father.
Okay. Pope John Paul II, a Jew.
It's Justin Welby.
Justin Welby. He knows about us. What's he saying? Nothing.
He's got all the information. The Queen of England knows very well that the Christ has returned.
Oh, we've served the Queen of England to get her butt off the bloody throne, right?
Yeah.
So what do we get in reply? Murder attempts. So that should answer that question. Now, Tim has some questions that he wants us to address.
Talking about the history of Ireland. This is for Tim, who is watching. He's become like that small child. He just wants everybody to be happy. And
Lovely man in America.
Okay. I'll read the conversation because this is where it started. We were asked, it might have been Tim or it might have been Andy, so this is about the Lebensborn, SS Lebensborn project. Well, the Christ has his own views about that. Tell him.
Well, the Lebensborn basically was a volunteer situation where you've got people that had been selected, the women of Germany and the men of Germany, primarily through the SS, young men and young women, that they wanted to get them together in a marriage situation and produce babies of the pure genetics. Nothing wrong with that, I agree 100%. If you look at the Colburn Bible that was unearthed, was stamped out primarily by Henry VIII, and this was stemming from the time between the years of 12 years of age and 30 years of age. Where was I? So I was in India, I was this, I was there, I wasn't, I was in England. The reason being is that there were 60 universities in Glastonbury and people from all over the world, which has been stamped out of history, of course, because who is in charge of the encyclopedias? Hello. Encyclopedia Britannica is owned by the Sears Roebuck Company, a Jewish organisation in America. The Encyclopedia Britannica. Right. So I got onto it very early, and I'll get back to what I'm saying. When I was looking up Charles I, he was beheaded on a Wednesday, so they say in the Britannica. In fact, it was a Saturday. It was on a Sabbath. And they had difficulty getting anyone to do it. So anyhow, they hacked his head off. They didn't just nice clean chop, they hacked it off. He said in a beautiful speech, or that he wrote to his daughters the night before, and his sons, that he was going to be with Jesus. Well, he was.
Now, why was he, first of all, he was set up, but
well,
why?
He was set up because he
Explain.
wouldn't allow the Jews back into England. And he was ruling the nation, and with all the canals in the interior of England, he would put a duty on the trade that would go through the canals, and he would charge so much money, and that money was used to run England. But he did that for 11 years, and he was ruled a tyrant, charged with being a tyrant, when in fact he was the king, and you can't argue with the king because of the divine right of king.
But unbeknownst to him, 2 years before, Oliver Cromwell wrote to the Jews in Amsterdam, and he was after finance from them so that he could rise to power, if you like. They wrote back and said, yep, we'll finance you, no problem, get rid of Charles, don't make it look like our suggestion or we had anything to do with it. So it took 2 years. And
They were specific, murder.
yeah,
So.
they told him to fabricate a circumstance where he would flee, give him a way of escape, he would flee and then be charged as a tyrant, brought back, tried, 3 days later, his head hacked off. So, and then that was the opening of the door again.
Well, let's throw some
Jews.
numbers there. My stepfather finally died when he was 99 years old, and none too soon, I can tell you. And at the very last, he was trying to disown me and cut me out of the will, but this wouldn't have been what my mother wanted. My sister-in-law and brother, or sister-in-law in particular, talked him into not doing it, keeping me into the will, and the surge between my brother, stepbrother, my stepsister and myself. And the address was 7 Trevone Street, Padstow in Sydney. Now, where the royal family came from, where the people that eventually moved over to fulfill prophecy, Joseph of Arimathea was a tin man, and there's songs in Cornwall that talk about Joseph, and they sing about Joseph was a tin man. So he was the richest man in the planet at the time, and he was sailing back and forth with all these ships. He was trading throughout the Middle East, Mediterranean, Egypt and Rome, and of course in the Holy Lands. And this is why he was able, when he was going back and forwards with this huge amounts of many ships, and the weight they were carrying of tin and copper was huge. And because after the age of 12, after Joseph, who was an old man, he died, the uncle always takes over the family. So he took over Mary as being moved from his being a niece to a daughter, and I become the grandson of Joseph of Barithomea, who was the uncle of Mary. So from Cornwall, in Cornwall there's a street there called Trevone Road, and it's the nearest town is Padstow. If you measure from that furthest most point to the 7 Trevone Street in Sydney, it's 1077.2.6 miles. Now, the difference in age between the beheading of Charles I and myself is the same number, 107726 days. Now, the diagonal of the Great Pyramid, with the capstone in place, the basis has been shrunk by 286.1 inches in perimeter. When you push it back out to the actual size, what it should have been, it's 36524.24, and these is marked out in corner sockets in fine chisel lines. And what you have then is a diagonal, and that is 1077.26 feet. And the 1077 is birthday. So the beheading of Charles, the diagonal of the Great Pyramid, and the distance between the two locations of the 7 Trevone Street, Padstow in Sydney, and 7 Trevone Road, Padstow in Cornwall, is the same numbers, 1077.2.6 in miles, 1077.26 in days, and of course the 1077.26 in feet. Hello, do you get it? So this is what the authorities have known about me for a very long period of time. They don't want you to know.
Now, you are of the tribe of Judah. That is the tribe.
All right. Now, how the tribe of Judah comes to answer Tim's question, there's the branch. So in ancient times, Ireland, of course, they were descended from the Essenes, and then you've got the tribe of Judah that came into line, which is the royal tribe of the tribe of Judah, not Judaism, of the tribe of Judah, and that is where the two mingle together. Now in 583 BC, Jeremiah, the grandfather of Zedekiah, the last king, who was placed on the throne by the king of Babylon.
Let's just explain, get this really clear. Judah split. It became the branch that remained within the Middle East, if you like, Jerusalem area. But the twig emigrated years. It was at the time
1522 or something
1522.
Like that. BC.
And they went and they settled in Ireland. So you've got the branch and the twig, so it's split into two. This is very important to understand. So now we're talking about Zedekiah.
We're just talking royal family here. That's what we're looking at, not other people that may have tagged along. We're talking about the royal line has to be
where all
of that
the
particular.
prophets came from.
All the prophets came from those. The advisors to the kings were all of the royal line. So now, what happens is you've got Jeremiah takes the Laphael, as they call it, the two daughters of Zedekiah, because the Chaldean king didn't believe that the royal line descended through the daughters of the king. So he blinded the king and killed his 4 sons, only baby boys. He was only about 32 years old. And he died blinded and dragged off to Babylon, died in a dungeon for resisting and trying to get rid of his authority. So this goes off in many, many directions. There was a late siege by 18 months. The Egyptian army was involved. They was cut off in the Sinai by the Babylonians, and they were sent packing. And then they laid siege to Jerusalem for 18 months. They built a wall outside the catapult range. And in that meantime, Jeremiah took the Ark of the Covenant and hid it in Jeremiah's grotto underneath the city. So it was discovered by Ron Wyatt, an American, in
January the 6th,
1982. And I was 1982 weeks old on that day. So the 2 children, girls, were taken first to Egypt and then by boat they ended up in Spain, and then from Spain they went through the Straits of Gibraltar and then up to Tara in Ireland, landing there on the 11th of October 1583. 583 BC. So that's how that all came about. And what he was doing was bringing the twigs of the cedar. So the cedar represents the royal line. So here's Jeremiah. Jeremiah takes the 2 twigs of the top of the branch, that means that's the last of it, and takes it over to Ireland, and then they married into the line of kings that go down through the Irish line of kings. Right? So what basically is a rejoining of that. Now they descend down to the Scottish line of kings, and the rock of the scone, which was the anointing of the kings upon the rock, and which made it all holy, that was eventually taken to Scotland, and not by force. It was part of the move of the, so it was 1200 years in Ireland, then it goes to Scotland, and of course then this is where you've got King William the Lion of Scotland. He was crowned upon that, but Edward I stole it during the what's called the competition for the new king, because Alexander had a son, or rather King William had a son, Alexander II, and then he had a son, Alexander III, and then he died without having an heir. So they called all the royals together from Europe to compete in this royal competition, that's known as the competition. So in them was Patrick Golightly, who was the only living male survivor of William the Lion of Scotland, through Isabel d'Avenal, who was a descendant of the kings of Jerusalem. So
now,
this is all coming together in... he withdrew and swore fealty. In other words, then Robert Bruce got in, who was supported by the Knights Templars, which is basically Freemasons and Satanism.
Now, just on that, because I can see that the information that is available to the world through the internet is a lot of the time very skewed. Remember, this is the victor, these are the Jews, the enemy of Jesus and the enemy of all humankind made in the image of God. They skew certainly all history where it regards the Christ and his bloodline. Anne has done a marvellous job at bringing forth the genetic bloodline of the Christ. And I noted with interest that on the chart it suggests that the children, the offspring of William the Lion King of Scotland, that he had with Isabel d'Avenel, who was his second wife after the death of his first wife, Ermengarde, it is suggested that they are all illegitimate. That's the dotted line on the chart, and you look down in the key and it says illegitimate. Well, that is a perversion of reality, and it is...
So you could say it's like this: who's your mother? Daphne. Who's your father? Reg. Who's your uncle? You go through it, right? Oh yeah, but that was out of wedlock. Oh, you're illegitimate, don't count. Come on. Right? This is the bullshit you've got to go through to live up to the standards that have been laid down by these lunatics that want to control and cut off the line of the Golightly line, where in fact it's an impossibility. Once you go into a woman, and I warn you chaps out there who sleep around, once you go into a woman, you're married to her, son.
It's not about a ceremony or a certificate.
There's no ceremony involved, right? There's no sticking up for what the Catholic Church has said or whatever. You go into it, you've got a problem, right? So be careful where you're going into, right? I suggest you do it the right way and have a marriage and so forth. Do it right, with all your relatives there and be happy.
As witnesses to the union. That's what it's all about. So
virginity's got to come back into play because this is another Jewish plot. The Jews are based on a sexual cult, and there's a lot of Jews out there, don't get me wrong, that are sick to death of all this, and like Einstein, right? He hated it, right? So if it's good enough for Einstein that the Nazarene is this man that he admired so much, surely it should be good enough for all Jews, because he's a little bit smarter than all Jews, right? Although he was wrong about the speed alone.
All right, now reading further, Tim, we can't let this go because he asks specifically, this is his, he says, right, I see, this is after explaining about the daughters of Zedekiah taken by their grandfather Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, to safety in Tara Island, where they rejoined Judah, and from there comes the Christ bloodline until it was time to go back to Jerusalem, the emigration, to fulfill the prophecies of Isaiah. So he says, right, I see, and this is Tim's own thinking. He says, well, Jesus was supposed to be of the tribe of Judah, but I contest this because he talks about, I think he was a Danite, which means he was a Celt. The King Tut and the Egyptian pharaohs were Celts too. The bloodline has been traced to the Caucasus in 9500 BC. The Irish are the tribe of Dan.
What?
Jesus
How
is
many
of
years
their
are you talking
flock. 9500 BC.
9500?
Yes, that's what he's saying. Yeah. Now, the Irish Danites are known as the Sons of Light. There is an Essene Dead Sea Scroll called the Sons of Light versus the Sons of Darkness.
Sorry, we'll talk about that a little bit. The Dead Sea Scrolls from Quran are diabolically opposed to and were responsible for the crucifixion. Hello? They were the Herodians, right? They had fallen away from the actual teachings of the Essenes, become evil bastards, and they were looking for Herod to relieve them from the yoke of Rome. And they lived on the Herodian way. And you'll see in a couple of verses there where Herod and the Pharisees and Sadducees were laying in their words a snare for Jesus, and he says, "You are vipers and dens of blah, blah, blah." It goes on. So it was Herodians that was behind it. Now, they had three types of crucifixion. One was to be hung with your hands up above your head like that. And that's probably the one that was most easily accomplished. And the other one was on a cross. This is supposed to be the Essenes. They weren't. The true Essenes were from Carmel, which is why, as a boy, I was known as the Nazarene. Because it became Nazareth. And you can find where it is today. It's way north of Jerusalem, Nazareth. Fair walking distance, puts it that way. And there's a mountain next to it where they still to this day have the Essenes. Because they don't recognise me, of course.
No. If Tim, and for all of you searching for the truth, you must remember that everything that is released and allowed to become perhaps the new thought, the new understanding, is controlled. Any information regarding the truth of the Christ, who he is taken away. I call it all of the rabbit holes. Bottom line is the Christ is here is to teach and bring correction.
Wasn't it Jim Stone who brought it to the world's attention that the rabbis, because he was infiltrated for 2 years.
He infiltrated them for 2 years.
Sorry, yes. And he revealed that after the normal services, the ones in the know would get together and they'd be given certain tasks to perform. One would become a librarian. You go into a library and what happens? They start sorting through the books that's going to be trashed in the dumpster.
Yes.
Right?
So all
they want their history, not
removed.
the true history, and they get rid of it. It's worldwide.
They actually take the books for themselves. They make sure they've got copies of everything, a hard copy. But anyway, moving, because he continues to say, he says, okay, well, Taltha, Danan are in Ireland, and they are the tribe of Dan. So how does that fit in? And then, but more specifically, he talks, I live with a MacNee. The MacNees are the original Irish kings of Ulster, the oldest royal line in the British Isles. Before he moved in, I installed an Egyptian altar in the room.
There's a problem right there.
Yes. An Egyptian altar in the room with a picture of King Tut's sarcophagus lid behind the altar. He moved in a month later. The MacNee line changed its name to MacNeville, and both the House of York and the House of Lancaster tried to marry into Neville line to legitimise their claim to the throne. Now, Tim continues, he says, 100% of the Irish are bloodline descendants of King Tut. Genetic researchers proved this. You can Google it. It hit the mainstream publications around the world. The cat is out of the bag on that. The MacNee are descendants of the Pharaoh Conchubar who came to Ireland. Now, first of all, before Brian goes on, Google it. Genetic researchers prove this. Well, who are the genetic researchers, first of all?
And how about 9,500 years ago? Like, we do know the flood occurred, right? We can determine that by the amount of time it takes for the solar system to dip back and forth across the Milky Way equatorial line. And when it dipped across the last time equatorial line, everything changed So Mars became drawn close, and it was inside the orbit of the Earth, and it was moved out. And if you are the same distance out from the Sun in an orbit, you are doing the same speed. So the larger planet, the Earth, drew over time Mars towards it, and then, like bar magnets, they lined up with the North Pole attracting the South Pole of Mars, and all the water flowed off. So we know, and we can calculate how long ago the flood was, right? And it's certainly between the time of the building of the pyramid, right? And then this was all performed by the descendants of Enoch, who were Essenes. This is where the Essenes come from. And Methuselah, that was 969 years old, and they lived that long. You will be living that long in the future, I can assure you. And we get rid of all this bullshit that's been fed in the air, atmosphere, food and genetics. And then his son, of course, was Lamech. He lived 777 years. And if you take all of the patriarchs back in time and do the Hebrew gematria on the letters of their names, and they all represent a number, you add them all together and you know what you get? 3168. So this is the type of thing that is built into the Hebrew language. Now, don't make the mistake of thinking Hebrew is the language that the Jews speak in Israel today. It's not. They speak Yiddish. All they have done is taken the Hebrew letters, and this is from the Khazars, they've taken the Hebrew letters and invented Yiddish, which is primarily 55,000 words, which is overwhelmingly German. Mm. Right?
Now, getting back to all things Egyptian, we were in Egypt last year. Tim, I implore you, I can see now that made in the image of God, what does that mean? You said it as co-creators. Your thoughts will attract whatever it is that you are giving your mind over to. So you say you erected an Egyptian altar, then that has attracted into your life somebody else who is in another rabbit hole, a very, very deep rabbit hole. Queen Elizabeth I, who we know is of the devil herself, it traces the whole linkage of this back to Egypt is of the devil. Jesus had nothing to do with the Egyptian culture, except that he was there for 6 years in Alexandria, and it's all about
We've been there too, to the actual place.
It is the world of the dead. It is totally the world of your dead. And when you get in, because you're giving your mind to it and doing this research, you think you're on a path of truth. No, you are on a rabbit hole. Drop it completely. This is where they want you to go. This is why the producers of Hollywood, all the sacrifices of the Hollywood stars, like Whitney Houston, her funeral was in a sarcophagus. You are dealing with the demonic world of the dead. There is absolutely no life in anything Egyptian. Believe us, we've been there. We were there for 10 weeks.
There's all the Freemasons, they look at ISIS, and we go up the road here a little while.
ISIS highway.
ISIS bloody highway.
Yes.
I mean, the Freemasons in Australia, they're everywhere.
Yeah. It is all part of the hidden mysteries, this thing that has people's minds trapped. There is no light in it. Jesus comes to bring light and shine the light on all of these things where people have their minds trapped. And you, Tim, you are a joy. You say you just want people to be happy and smile. So that is the mission of the Christ. But the adults who have learned all of this information, these are the days when knowledge has increased because of technology. However,
along with bullshit.
As adults, you must lay it all down. The Christ is here to sort it all out, and it's really quite simple. Anything that
you must become like a little child, you know nothing, and suffer the little children not to come unto me. And that's why I think you should all get into this Batman idea. Get yourself little Batman suits and show up at the front door of some bastard that's been taking your children. So listen, lady, we're going to give you one chance. Don't make no threats. They'll hear about you. Your little Batman outfit.
And, okay, so continue about bloodlines and all of this. Look,
why isn't the Queen doing what I'm doing here?
God is recorded within his creation. As we explained, it's all in the numbers, the measure of his temple. He measures everything. And there the truth is revealed. Tim, we explained to you very clearly the Easy Cosmos program, and then of course the James Strong's, which is the book within the book of the 1611 Bible. So it's all being there for the one whose right it is to rule that divine right, who of course you would expect the Christ to be as the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. He is the key of the house of David, and only the things that he opens can he open, so that no man can shut, and the things that he shuts, of course, no man can open. And he comes to the meek, those who realize the delusion that everybody has been living under, which again is the prophecy from the Revelation, because the devil was cast down to the earth, the devil and his angels. Whoa, it is 1 hour exactly.
Goodbye.
Tim, we hope that's helped.